The camera slowly pans over a dusty, lonely town as the sun sets, painting the sky in blood red and gold. Everyone in this town whispered her name, calling her the beast in the sack. They said no man could tame her, no one could see past her wild, untamed ways. Yet there she stood, on the edge of the wooden bridge, her silhouette sharp against the dying light, tense, guarded, her eyes full of secrets only the night could understand. The wind whispered through her hair, carrying the echoes of rumors, hatred, and fear that followed her like shadows in the dark. And then he arrived, a lone cowboy on a worn-out horse, his eyes steady, calm, and curious. He had heard the stories, but he felt something different, something no one else saw. He sensed the loneliness behind her defiance, the pain beneath the fury. That he knew that if he was brave enough to look beyond the whispers, he might find the heart hidden inside the beast, and that truth could change both their lives forever. She moved through the dusty streets with her head high, her steps sure and confident, but eyes always alert, watching, judging, guarded. The town had labeled her wrongly, calling her cruel, untamable, even dangerous, yet no one knew the truth behind her silence or the storms she carried inside. She worked hard, alone, on her small ranch at the edge of town, surrounded by windswept plains and secrets no one dared to speak aloud. Rumors followed her everywhere, but she answered only with quiet strength, never begging for acceptance. Then came the cowboy, honorable, patient, with eyes that missed nothing and a heart that noticed what others ignored. He watched her from afar, curious about the woman everyone feared, drawn to the vulnerability hidden beneath her armor. The sun dipped low over the lonely town, casting long shadows, and in that quiet moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the first spark between them, a spark that promised danger, truth, and the possibility of something real in a place built on whispers and lies. The cowboy finally rode closer to the edge of her property, his horse's hooves stirring small clouds of dust that swirled around the fence posts and the tall, dry grass as she stood with arms crossed, her posture defensive and eyes narrowing at the approaching figure, silently daring him to come closer. She did not smile, her lips pressed tight, as if any softness might betray the walls she had built over years of fear and misunderstanding. For the town's whispers had taught her that kindness often carried hidden traps, and every man who had once claimed to care had left a scar that still throbbed beneath her calm exterior. She sized him up in seconds, noting the slow, steady way he dismounted, the way his eyes scanned her ranch with a mix of respect and curiosity without judgment, his hands loose at his sides, unthreatening yet steady, an unfamiliar combination that made her heart beat faster with a strange, unwelcome flutter. She spoke first, in a low, wary voice, asking what he wanted, her tone sharp enough to warn him that she would not be fooled by charm or empty words, her eyes glinting with suspicion and a hint of challenge. He met her gaze steadily, his voice calm but firm as he introduced himself, his words carrying honesty and a hint of humor, not mockery, not condescension, and as he spoke, she noticed the subtleties in his expression, the slight softening around his eyes when he saw the small details of her life, her worn boots, her calloused hands, the stubborn line of her jaw, and something inside her shifted imperceptibly, an instinctual recognition that he saw her without the filters the town had imposed. She stepped back instinctively, ready to retreat to the safety of solitude, reminding herself of every time trust had been broken, of every whisper that had called her dangerous, beastly, untouchable, and yet she could not deny the pull she felt toward him, the way his presence made the air seem lighter, even as the tension between them crackled like dry lightning across the sky. She remembered the rumors as a warning, how the town would watch and judge, how easily one wrong step could undo everything, and she clenched her fists to steady herself, not wanting to appear weak, but feeling an unfamiliar vulnerability rise to the surface, a vulnerability she had hidden from the world for too long. That he noticed the flicker, subtle and fleeting, behind her guarded eyes, the tremor in her voice when she tried to mask it, and he smiled just slightly, not arrogantly, not mockingly, just enough to reassure her that he would not exploit it, that he was patient enough to wait until she was ready to let someone in, even if slowly, even if cautiously. The tension lingered, charged with the electricity of first impressions and the unspoken understanding that they were both walking the edge of something unknown, something dangerous if mishandled, an uncharted connection neither had expected, yet both felt keenly, like the air before a storm ready to break. And as she finally lowered her arms, ever so slightly, her defenses softening just enough to allow him to approach further, the world seemed to hold its breath, the sun casting long shadows across the ranch, the wind whispering through the dry grass, carrying the echoes of the town's gossip, while he took the first careful step toward understanding her heart, seeing not the beast everyone feared but the human behind the legend, the hidden soul waiting for someone brave enough to see it. And in that silent, suspended moment, the stage was set for a fragile, perilous bond, where trust and fear collided, where rumors could not reach, where the first sparks of something real flickered quietly yet insistently in the space between them, promising both danger and the possibility of love that could withstand the judgment of all the town. The days that followed their first encounter brought whispers that slithered through the dusty streets like snakes, twisting themselves into every corner of the town and reaching her ears whether she wanted them to or not, calling her beastly, dangerous, untouchable, spreading old rumors with new venom that made neighbors glance at her with suspicion and children peek from behind fences with wide, curious eyes, forcing her to navigate her life under a microscope where every action was judged and every word twisted, while the cowboy remained a quiet presence at the edge of her world, never intruding but always noticing, always helping in small ways that mattered, like repairing a broken fence post with careful hands or leaving fresh water for her horses, actions that seemed simple but carried the weight of trust he was slowly building, each gesture silently saying he saw her, all of her, not just the label the town had forced upon her shoulders, her eyes catching him at unexpected moments, heart tightening with an unfamiliar warmth that made her wary even as it tempted her to hope. Each smile, each look of understanding, a small rebellion against the isolation she had accepted as permanent, even as fear gripped her when she remembered past betrayals, when she felt the shadow of judgment pressing against her back, reminding her how easily hearts could be broken by words sharper than knives and eyes colder than the wind that swept across the plains. And yet he persisted, gently, patiently, never demanding her trust, but allowing her to see it in action, like the way he handled the townsfolk's questions with respect for her dignity, never letting their stares or comments go unnoticed, shielding her subtly, while also showing her that not every man would see her as the beast they claimed she was. Sometimes the silence between them spoke louder than words, the stolen moments near the corral, his hand brushing briefly against hers, his eyes soft yet strong, leaving her trembling with a mixture of desire and fear. Each close encounter interrupted by her instinct to retreat, her walls rising again, never letting anyone fully inside, never letting her heart risk what it had learned to guard so fiercely, and the tension of those interruptions created a fragile rhythm between them, a dangerous dance of longing and caution, suspense lingering like smoke in the air as the cowboy waited patiently for her to lower her defenses even for a fraction of time, while she wondered if she could ever let someone see all of her, if anyone could endure the truth without running, if the rumors would always define her in the eyes of the world, and whether this man, so different from the rest, would remain when the weight of judgment became too heavy to bear. Each glance, each hesitant step toward him, each shared silence carrying the unspoken question of whether love could exist in a place built on fear and gossip, whether trust could grow in soil poisoned by lies. As days passed, and the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows that mirrored the uncertainty in her heart, the cowboy's steady presence became a beacon, an unspoken promise that someone could see her without fear, without judgment, without twisting her past into a weapon. And though the tension mounted, the emotional connection deepened, fragile yet undeniable, building toward a moment neither could predict, a moment where the line between suspicion and trust, between fear and desire, between rumor and reality, blurred into a delicate balance that left her breathless and him silently determined to prove that. Beneath the whispers and the town's cruelty lay a heart worth finding, a heart only he seemed brave enough to see. The evening air was heavy with the scent of wild grass and the fading warmth of the sun as she finally allowed herself to linger near the corral, her hands brushing against the worn wood as if grounding herself in the small, familiar routine of her life. The cowboy standing quietly nearby, his presence steady and unobtrusive, watching her with patient eyes that seemed to see every hidden corner of her heart. She spoke softly, almost a whisper, sharing a memory from her childhood, how she had dreamed of freedom and open skies while the town's rules and expectations had tried to cage her spirit, how betrayal had shaped her defenses, how loneliness had been her constant companion, her voice trembling slightly as the weight of years spent hiding her true self spilled into the quiet evening, revealing the pain and hope she had carried silently for so long. And in that moment, the cowboy understood the depth of her soul. Far beyond the crude labels the town had stitched onto her like scarlet letters, he saw her courage, her vulnerability, her longing for someone to see her not as a beast, but as a woman with dreams, with fears, with a heart desperate for connection that he reached out gently, offering a hand not to intrude, but to invite. Simple gestures becoming profound symbols of trust, each glance, each word exchanged, each shared silence weaving a fragile thread between them that grew stronger with every heartbeat. She hesitated, testing him as she had tested everyone who had approached before, her eyes flicking toward the streets beyond the fence where neighbors watched silently, rumors poised to ignite into judgment at any sign of weakness or misstep. The tension of the town's gaze pressed against her back, yet in his calm presence, she found a paradoxical safety, a space where she could reveal the smallest truths of herself without fear, where laughter and sorrow could coexist, where the weight of gossip felt distant, almost irrelevant. And as she finally let her defenses drop for just a fraction of time, allowing a genuine smile to touch her lips and a spark of hope to shine in her eyes, the cowboy felt an emotional resonance that confirmed everything he had sensed from the beginning, that the heart inside the so-called beast was more radiant than anyone could imagine, more delicate yet stronger than the prejudices surrounding her. Each small act between them, a shared bucket of water, an exchanged glance, an unfinished conversation, became a testament to the bond forming quietly yet insistently. As shadows lengthened and night approached, her trust emerging slowly, like a fragile flower pushing through dry soil, while the town continued to murmur in the darkness, waiting for her to stumble, for the woman they feared to fail, never understanding that strength could coexist with vulnerability, that courage could live alongside tenderness. And in that suspended, breathless moment, the emotional bridge between them solidified, balancing delicately between fear and hope, between past wounds and future possibilities, as the cowboy's steady presence and unspoken understanding gave her permission to be seen fully for the first time, as recognition of her heart, a silent promise that she no longer had to hide behind the walls built from years of mistrust. The quiet night wrapping them in its gentle embrace, while the unrelenting tension of judgment lingered beyond, reminding them both that love and trust were acts of bravery in a world eager to define her by what she was not rather than by all that she was, creating a poignant, cinematic moment of connection that carried the weight of past pain, yet hinted at a fragile, precious hope capable of defying the whispers, setting the stage for choices that would test them both and determine whether the fragile bond could endure in the face of scrutiny, misunderstanding, and the lingering threat of the town's judgmental eyes. The tranquility of the evening shattered when a rider appeared over the distant ridge, dust trailing behind him like a warning, his presence tense and menacing. The town's old rival who had long resented her independence, now seeking to exploit any moment of vulnerability to humiliate her, his gaze sharp and cruel, measuring her as prey, forcing her to confront the fears she had buried deep, memories of betrayal, of whispers that had followed her from childhood, of the constant shadow of judgment that made every step she took a careful calculation of risk and survival. She froze for a heartbeat, heart pounding, as the weight of the town's prejudice pressed upon her like a physical force, reminding her of every time she had been labeled dangerous, untouchable, beastly, forcing her to question if she could ever trust anyone fully, even when they seemed different, even when their eyes promised kindness, even when their hands offered steady support. Her gaze flicked to the cowboy who had been quietly close, yet unwavering, his stance protective without being controlling, his presence a silent vow that he would not abandon her, that he would face any threat at her side and not flinch, his eyes meeting hers with a calm that demanded courage, his voice cutting through the tension like a rope anchoring her to reality as he urged her to stand firm and not let fear dictate her choices. And slowly, she felt herself drawing in a deep, steadying breath, letting go of the instinct to flee, realizing that this was more than a test of strength. It was a test of trust. It was a moment that could define whether she would allow someone to see her fully or retreat again into solitude, her fingers brushing the reins of her horse, her muscles tensing with the memory of every scornful glance, her heart pounding with the duality of terror and adrenaline, while the rival advanced, smirking, unaware that the bond forming between them was stronger than any intimidation, that the courage she had hidden beneath years of suspicion was about to surface, that the man beside her was not a judge but an ally, not a threat but a shield, his loyalty visible in every measured step he took, his hand resting lightly on hers for a moment, an unspoken signal that she was not alone, that she could fight without losing herself or her heart. And as the confrontation grew nearer, the suspense built with every heartbeat, wondering if she could fully trust him, if he could protect not just her physical safety, but the fragile heart she had so carefully guarded, if together they could face the cruelty and prejudice of a town unwilling to understand, each movement, each glance, each breath a test of their resolve and connection, her fear colliding with desire, her past colliding with hope, until finally, she lifted her chin, met his gaze with clarity and courage, ready to face the challenge, ready to allow someone to share the burden she had carried alone for so long, while he matched her courage with unwavering strength, creating a tension so thick it seemed the air itself might crack, an emotional, cinematic climax where love, trust, danger, and suspense intertwined, forcing them both to confront what they felt, what they feared, what they longed for, proving in that tense, electrified moment that some bonds could withstand fear, risk, judgment, even hatred, as they stood together, ready to fight, ready to protect each other, ready to show the town that true loyalty and love could survive even in the harshest of storms, and that the heart behind the legend would not only endure but shine brighter than ever, defying every rumor, prejudice, and doubt that had ever tried to claim her. The sun rose slowly over the dusty town, casting warm golden light across the empty streets as she stood beside the cowboy, her hand lightly brushing his, feeling the steady strength of his presence like an anchor against the tides of her past. She finally allowed herself to breathe fully, her walls falling piece by piece as she revealed the truths she had hidden for so long, the pain she had carried, the dreams she had nurtured in secret, the vulnerability she had feared would make her weak, and the kindness she had kept buried beneath layers of guarded pride. And he listened with unwavering attention, his eyes soft yet steady, not a trace of judgment, only understanding, only the quiet affirmation that her heart was precious and deserved to be seen and cherished. Her voice trembled at first as words spilled out, memories of loneliness, of whispered rumors, of nights spent questioning if anyone could ever truly see her beyond the label everyone had forced upon her. But as she continued, she noticed the change in him, his smile gentle, his hand covering hers for reassurance, his presence a promise that she could finally be whole, that the beast they all feared was gone, leaving only the woman who had been brave enough to survive, brave enough to love, brave enough to trust. His quiet laughter mixed with hers as they shared moments of joy, small gestures becoming monumental symbols of connection, each glance holding meaning, each touch carrying warmth and acceptance, while the town began to stir with curiosity and quiet shock, watching the woman they had labeled as dangerous move with confidence, move with grace, move with a heart fully revealed, her past whispers dissolving like morning mist, her reputation transformed not by argument, but by the undeniable truth of her courage, her kindness, her resilience, the cowboy's steady devotion amplifying her newfound freedom, showing the world that she was no longer bound by fear or misunderstanding, but defined by her strength and her heart. And as they walked together toward the horizon, the golden light illuminating the plains, the wind carrying away remnants of judgment and doubt. There was a sense of redemption in the air, a silent celebration of love earned through patience and respect, of understanding forged in shared hardship. And though the town might always remember the rumors, the reality was undeniable. She had become herself fully, seen and accepted by the one who mattered most. And he had discovered the heart he had sought from the beginning, beating strongly, beautifully, without pretense or fear, an emotional resonance that needed no words, a cinematic, quiet triumph that spoke of trust reclaimed, love blossomed, and lives transformed through courage, connection, and unwavering loyalty. As they stood side by side, hands intertwined, smiles gentle but full of meaning, the camera pulling back to capture the vast open plains, golden light bathing them in hope and peace, while soft, invisible music seemed to underscore their journey, emphasizing that what had once been a story of whispers and fear had become a story of heart, of redemption, of understanding, and most importantly, of love that endured beyond judgment, rumors, or past pain. A love that shone so brightly that the name once feared vanished completely, leaving only the woman she had always been and the man who had seen her fully, proof that even in a world built on suspicion, truth, kindness, and courage could create a life worth living, worth sharing, worth remembering. Forever. The sun dipped behind the distant hills, casting long golden shadows across the quiet ranch. As they stood together, shoulder to shoulder, her hand gently resting in his, fingers intertwined like the unspoken promise of trust and love that had carried them through whispers, fear, and doubt. She looked into his eyes, seeing reflection of her true self finally recognized and cherished, her past pain fading like the evening light, his calm strength grounding her, his smile soft but certain, a reminder that she was no longer the beast the town had feared but a woman whose heart had been seen fully and deeply. They shared a quiet laugh, an easy glance, a moment suspended in time that carried the weight of every trial endured and every judgment overcome. The wind whispered through the tall grass, as if echoing their journey, and in that golden, tranquil moment, the narrator's voice held tender truth. Everyone called her a beast, but the cowboy saw a heart that was worth more than all the whispers in town. And as the camera lingered on their gentle smiles, the intertwined hands, the serene horizon, viewers were left with a lingering sense of hope, redemption, and love that would remain in their hearts long after the story faded.